Love makes you blind, but sometimes it hides more than just flaws. It hides something unnatural, something watching you from behind the eyes of the person you trust the most. These are not stories about heartbreak. They are about terror, about the moment you realize the person you're holding close isn't really a person at all. From chilling encounters in the dead of night to lovers who aren't what they seem. These are 3 very scary, true, haunted girlfriend horror stories, and they'll make you question who's sleeping next to you tonight. Story 1. I met Santa in my second year of college, at one of those awkward gatherings where nobody really knows why they're there, but everyone's pretending to have fun. She was sitting on the arm of a couch, sipping a soda, not saying much. Her friends were loud, laughing, tossing jokes across the room. But she seemed like she was tuned to a different frequency, half listening, half drifting somewhere else entirely. I remember shaking her hand for the first time. It wasn't just cool to the touch, it was cold. Not the kind of cold you get from holding a drink, but the deep, unnatural chill of metal left outside in winter. I joked about it, asked if she was hiding an ice pack in her palm. She just smiled faintly, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. We started talking more after that night. At first, it was little things. Coffee between classes, helping each other study, late walks across campus. Sana wasn't like anyone I'd met before, gentle, polite. But there was something I couldn't quite name. She'd often go quiet mid-conversation, like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. A few weeks later, we were officially dating, and for a while, things felt normal enough. The first time she stayed at my apartment, it was a Thursday. We'd been watching some old black and white horror films on my couch. Santa seemed to really like them. She said the newer ones didn't feel real to her. Around midnight, she fell asleep leaning on my shoulder. I carried her to bed, switched off the lights, and we both drifted off. I woke up at exactly 3:14 a.m. No noise, no bad dream, just an uneasy pull that yanked me straight out of sleep. The bed beside me was empty. I sat up, my eyes adjusting to the faint glow from the street lamp outside. That's when I saw her. She was standing in the far corner of the room, facing the wall, her long black hair hanging forward so it completely hid her face. Her shoulders were rigid, her arms loose at her sides. She was whispering. At first, I thought she was talking to herself. But then I caught the words over and over, in a voice so soft I had to strain to hear it. I got out of bed slowly, my pulse climbing in my throat. When I reached her, I gently touched her shoulder. Her skin was ice, not cold like earlier. This was the biting, unnatural freeze that made my fingers ache instantly. Her head snapped toward me so fast that I stumbled back. For just a fraction of a second, her eyes weren't brown anymore. They were black, not just the pupils, but the entire eye. It was like looking into 2 pits with no bottom. Then she blinked, and just like that, she looked normal again, confused, sleepy. "What's wrong?" she mumbled. I told her she'd been standing in the corner whispering, but she laughed it off, saying she must have been dreaming. She crawled back into bed like nothing had happened. The next morning, I brought it up again over breakfast. She didn't remember any of it. After that night, it became a pattern. Every single time she stayed over, she'd wake up sometime after 3 a.m. and stand somewhere in the room. Sometimes the corner, sometimes at the foot of the bed, sometimes right by the door, always whispering to someone I couldn't see. The words were never exactly the same, but the tone was low, urgent, like she was warning whoever it was or pleading. One night, I tried staying awake to see it happen from start to finish. I kept the lights off, my breathing slow and steady so she'd think I was asleep. Sure enough, at 3:17 a.m., she stirred. I watched her sit up without making a sound. her head turned slightly as if she was listening to something outside the room. Then she swung her legs over the edge of the bed and stood. Her bare feet made no noise against the carpet as she moved towards the corner. I pulled my phone from under the pillow and started recording, careful not to move too much. Through the screen, I could see her just standing there, whispering in that same repetitive tone. But there was something else, something my eyes hadn't picked up. In the video, just over her shoulder, the shadows in the corner seemed wrong. At first, I thought it was just poor lighting, but then the shape shifted. It was tall, much taller than her. Its head brushed the ceiling, and where a face should have been, there was nothing. Just a smooth expanse of shadow until it smiled. It didn't have lips or teeth in the normal sense, just a white, crescent-shaped slit opening far too wide in the darkness. I stopped recording and set the phone down, my hands shaking. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next day, when I watched the video again in daylight, I felt physically sick. It wasn't just that thing standing there. It was the way Santa's whispers seemed to match its subtle movements, as if she was responding to it. Like they were having a conversation without words I could understand. I never showed Santa the video. I didn't know how she'd react. But from then on, I started making excuses for her not to stay over. Weeks passed. We still saw each other, but the nights apart became more frequent. Then, one evening, she showed up at my place unannounced. She looked exhausted, pale, dark circles under her eyes, lips trembling slightly. "Can I stay tonight?" she asked. I wanted to say no. I really did. But the way she looked, I couldn't turn her away. That night, I couldn't bring myself to pretend to sleep. I just lay there in the dark, watching her out of the corner of my eye. When the time came, she didn't get up. She just opened her eyes, staring straight at the ceiling, unblinking. Her breathing slowed, almost stopping. Then, without moving her head, her eyes slid toward me. "He's closer tonight," she whispered, and that was when I felt it. A cold breath against the back of my neck, like someone was standing right behind me. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. We broke up 2 weeks later, but sometimes late. At night, I'll wake up without knowing why. And in the corner of my room, I'll swear I see a shadow, just a little taller than it should be. And sometimes, when I close my eyes again, I hear her voice in the dark. "He's still here." Story 2. It started with pictures Amna and I met at a friend's birthday dinner. She was the kind of person who drew attention without trying. Warm smile, quick wit, a way of looking at you that made you feel like she saw something no one else did. We ended up sitting next to each other, and by the time dessert came around, it felt like we'd known each other for years. We started dating soon after. She was fun to be around, curious about everything, and had a playful obsession with taking selfies. Not just the smile at the camera kind. She liked Candid's weird angles, little slices of time that weren't posed. She'd say, "I want to remember the real us, not just the perfect versions." It was charming at first. I didn't mind. Who doesn't like having pictures with someone they care about? The first time I noticed something strange was about 6 months in. We were sitting on my couch one night, a movie playing quietly in the background. She leaned against me and suggested we take some pictures. I held out my phone, angled it so we were both in frame, and snapped a quick series. Click, 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 like we always did. She laughed after one of them, saying, "My hair's a mess, we need a better one," and leaned back in for another shot. After she went to the kitchen to grab some water, I started scrolling through the photos. The first picture stopped me cold. In it, I was smiling at the camera. Amna was not. She was looking at me. Not a sideways glance or a fleeting moment caught between blinks. Her head was angled toward me, eyes fixed on my face. Her expression was neutral, not affectionate, not amused, just watching. I frowned, trying to remember if she'd turned her head. I was sure she'd been looking straight at the lens. I checked the next photo, same thing. The third, the fourth, every single one. In all of them, I was looking at the camera, but Amna's eyes were locked on me, always the same unblinking gaze. When she came back, I showed her. This is weird. You weren't looking at the camera at all. She tilted her head, studied the pictures for a moment, then smiled faintly. I like them, she said. Then she handed my phone back and sat down, as if that was the end of the conversation. It stuck in my mind for the rest of the night. There was something about it that made me feel exposed, like I'd been caught in a private moment I didn't even know I was having. I tried to brush it off, but little things started happening after that. A few nights later, I woke up around 3:30 a.m. The room was dim, lit only by the faint glow of the street lamp outside. I rolled over and saw Amna sitting up in bed, facing me. Her eyes were open, unblinking. At first, I thought she was sleep-talking or something, but she wasn't moving her lips. She was just staring. "Babe," I whispered. She didn't answer. For a long, slow moment, we just looked at each other. Then, in a voice that didn't sound entirely like hers, flat, quiet, almost rehearsed, she said, "I'm trying to remember your face for later." A chill went through me. "What does that mean?" I asked, half laughing to mask my discomfort. She blinked once, slowly, and lay back down without a word. Within seconds, her breathing deepened like she was asleep again. The next morning, I brought it up. She frowned, said she didn't remember saying that, and laughed it off like it was nothing. Over the next week, I started paying closer attention, and that's when I began noticing her reflections. The first time was in my living room. I was standing near the window, looking out at the street, when I caught sight of her in the glass. She was on the couch behind me, scrolling through her phone. But in the reflection, she wasn't looking at her phone. She was looking at me. I turned around. She was bent over the screen, completely focused on it. I stared for a long moment, heart beating faster, before forcing myself to look away. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks, but it kept happening. We were cooking dinner together one night. I was chopping vegetables. She was at the stove. There's a small mirror on the wall across from the kitchen, and in it I could see her reflection. She had her back to me in real life, but her reflection's head was turned over her shoulder watching me. I dropped the knife. When I looked again, both the real Amna and her reflection were facing the stove like nothing had happened. The worst incident came a few days later. We'd gone out to eat and were walking back to my place. It was late, the streets mostly empty. She slipped her arm through mine, leaned her head against my shoulder. It should have been romantic, but as we passed a darkened shop window, I glanced at our reflection and saw her smiling. Not the casual, happy smile I knew. This one was stretched too wide, too still. Almost like her mouth was pulling at the edges, and her eyes in the reflection weren't looking at the glass. They were looking directly at me. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to see her face if she realized I'd noticed. I ended things not long after. I told her I didn't think we were working out, that I needed some space. She didn't cry, didn't protest. She just gave me that same faint smile and said, "Okay, it should have ended there. But sometimes in the middle of the night I'll wake up with the feeling of eyes on me, and when I glance toward the corner of the room, there she is, not moving, not blinking, just smiling. Exactly like in those pictures." Story 3. I met Zoya on a cold autumn evening at a friend's wedding. It was one of those receptions where the music was loud, people were drunk on happiness, and the air was thick with the smell of expensive perfume and roasted meat. But she didn't seem like she belonged in all that noise. While everyone else was laughing, dancing, and shouting over the music, Zoya sat alone at the far end of the hall, sipping from a wine glass she didn't seem interested in finishing. She wasn't scrolling on her phone or scanning the room. She just sat there, still, as if she was waiting for something. Her long black hair caught the dim golden light from the chandeliers, and her eyes, dark and deep, had this unsettling way of locking onto you and holding you there. When she noticed me looking, she didn't glance away like most people would. She kept watching, as if she were studying me. I should have looked away. Instead, I walked over. We talked for hours. She spoke softly, almost slowly, and she never once broke eye contact. When she smiled, it was faint, but it felt deliberate, like it meant more than it appeared. By the end of the night, I felt like I'd known her for years. We started dating soon after. Zoya was different. She didn't like crowded places. She never invited me over to her home, claiming it was too messy or that she wasn't ready for me to see it yet. She didn't have social media, and when I asked about her family, she told me they weren't in the picture anymore. No explanation, and yet I was drawn to her. There was something magnetic about the way she carried herself. Calm, deliberate, like she was always thinking 3 steps ahead of everyone else. One night, about a month into our relationship, she called me out of the blue. "I want to show you my favorite place," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There was something in her tone, something strange that made me pause. "What kind of place?" I asked. "You'll see," she said. "It's beautiful, peaceful." I picked her up an hour later. She climbed into my car, wearing a long black coat and no makeup, her hair hanging loose. She didn't say much during the drive, just directed me out of the city through winding back roads. The streetlights became less frequent until we were surrounded by nothing but darkness and the occasional flash of passing trees. After about 45 minutes, she told me to turn down a narrow dirt path. My headlights swept across something, rows of crooked moss-covered shapes, gravestones. We stopped in front of a rusted iron fence. There was no gate, no lights, just the moon casting silver over the jagged stones. "This is it," she said softly. I got out of the car reluctantly. The air was cold and heavy. The silence was wrong. No crickets, no wind, no distant cars, just stillness. Zoya stepped ahead of me, slipping off her shoes and walking barefoot onto the grass. Her toes brushed through the damp blades, leaving faint impressions in the dew. She didn't walk like she was exploring. She walked like she knew exactly where she was going. She moved between the graves with quiet precision, humming under her breath. It wasn't a tune I recognized. The sound was soft, but it lingered unnaturally in the air, as if the ground itself was carrying the notes. We reached a small, cleaner-looking grave near the back. Unlike the others, this one wasn't covered in moss. The stone was white, uncracked, and the dirt in front of it looked freshly tended. Zoya turned to me and smiled faintly. "This is mine," she said. I blinked. "Yours? What do you mean?" She crouched down in front of the stone, brushing her fingers over the carved letters. Her hair fell forward, hiding her face, and her lips began to move quickly. She was whispering something fast, rhythmic, in a language I couldn't place. The air grew colder. My breath fogged in front of me. I stepped closer. "Zoya, what are you doing?" She didn't answer. Her whispering grew faster, almost frantic, and her fingers dug into the dirt in front of the stone. Then the ground moved. At first, I thought it was my imagination, but the soil actually shifted, as if something underneath was pushing upward. A pale, bony hand burst through, clawing at the cold air. The skin was tight, almost translucent, stretched over knuckles and veins that looked impossibly thin. I froze. My mind screamed run, but my body wouldn't listen. Zoya looked up at me then. Her face was different. Her eyes were wider, too wide, and her smile stretched in a way that didn't seem human. I stumbled backward, finally breaking free from whatever kept me there, and sprinted for the car. My hands shook violently as I yanked the door open and fumbled with the keys. I looked back once, just once. She was gone. The hand was gone. The dirt was flat and undisturbed. The next morning, I told myself it had been a hallucination. Maybe the shadows played tricks on me. Maybe I'd been tired, my mind exaggerating what I saw, but I had to know. I drove back in daylight. The cemetery looked even older in the sun, but the grave was easy to find. When I read the inscription, the air left my lungs. Zoya Khan, born 1997, died 2020, 3 years before we met. I don't go near that part of town anymore, but sometimes, late at night, when I'm lying in bed, I swear I hear that same soft humming right outside my window. Love makes you blind, but sometimes it hides more than just flaws. It hides something unnatural, something watching you from behind the eyes of the person you trust the most. These are not stories about heartbreak, they are about terror, about the moment you realize the person you are holding close isn't really a person at all. From chilling encounters in the dead of night to lovers who aren't what they seem. These are 3 very scary, true haunted girlfriend horror stories, and they'll make you question who's sleeping next to you tonight.